Today we're going over the document that is called the affidavit. And this affidavit is the thing that allowed the government to come in and do the search and seizure of all of the things that they gathered in the Vision Quest companies, as well as the things that they took from my home. And let's just say all of the other collateral businesses or financial institutions that I had relationships with. I mean, this single document, in my opinion, is the document that created this downward spiral or the destruction of the Vision Quest entities. My wife's business, Whispering Hope Stables. It is the document that perhaps you could say has impacted my reputation in this community and in the financial services industry. And I certainly would say that this document is the document that created victims. And so I've had the opportunity. This document was under, I guess, concealment, but I didn't have access to it. So they were able to come in and search and seize information from my home, from my business, and I didn't even know why. But I'm in a position now where I've had the opportunity to read the document. I've had the opportunity to go through the discovery materials that we've been able to collect up to this point. And that, armed with the information that I already know about my business, as well as some of the key players who were staffing my organization, I am equipped now to comment on this document. And I think the two themes, although the words are interchangeable by many, I think they are different words. I think they mean different things. And so to me, the theme that I'm going to be hitting on as I go through this document, the two words that come to mind are dishonesty and deception. To me, dishonesty is just untrue statements. I mean, it's clear. This is not true. Deception, on the other hand, is a lot more challenging because to me, deception is, there's a percentage of it that's true, and then there's a percentage of it that is untrue, and it's all designed or disguised to come off as if it's true. To me, that's deception. I can overplay and I can underplay some items in this document that we're going to be going over. Let's be honest, my heart can deceive me too. I can get emotional about things. But I really believe, and I am convinced, that the primary cause of this mess that I'm dealing with has to do with the affair that took place between Steve Laska and Stacey Bean. And I believe that once this event was exposed, that it caused a chain reaction that has now impacted businesses, lives, clients, investors. And the affair is not only deceitful, but it was dishonest. They are not admitting the fact that they actually have an affair and are trying to cover it up. And it's a lie. And any time you have or you carry a lie, it only grows in size and weight and darkness and energy, and that's what we're seeing. All right, so we start with the affair, and let's go with what the government was told by Stacey and Steve. Basically, they never come clean and tell them that they actually had an affair. In fact, they actually spin it the opposite direction. Steve states that, and so does Stacey, states that it wasn't the two of them that had a sexual relationship, that it was actually Stacey and I that had a sexual relationship. And this can be found in paragraph 31, where it basically says that Peters made sexual demands to Bean. He yelled at Bean. He threatened Bean if she didn't do what Peters commanded of her. And that's really the start of it in the affidavit. It's a very small section of it. There's a lot more in discovery. So now what is crazy, though, is that they go in and they present this to the government, and they do this on May 1st. The challenge with it is that they don't know that I have a recording of a conversation where their affair got exposed in March of 2017. So March 5th, 2017, I'm in Carolina Ale House with Stacey and Steve, And my intentions initially were to record the conversation because my hope was actually to get rid of Stacy, and I didn't want there to be some kind of sexual harassment claim that could be brought up at a later time. But when Bean and Laska walk in on May 1st, and they tell their story of this Ponzi scheme and fraud, and candidly, I'm not discrediting Stacy's intelligence, but I think that the mastermind behind this was Steve Laska. I think that they didn't suspect or they didn't know that I had a recording of this conversation regarding their affair. And so they could be very bold. They could come in and make all kinds of claims. They could be whistleblowers, as it's defined. And they come under that whistleblower context, and it would be like, listen, I'm doing this because I'm looking out for what's best for these individual investors and for the Vision Quest clients, and that's why I'm here. By mid-June, their stories and their lives had to deepen, and here's why. On Thursday, June 15th, Stacy Bean sends me an email, and her email is to ask me why she hasn't received her severance. She was expecting a severance payment, and Stacy had left at the end of May. I didn't know what was going on at this point, but obviously she was working with the FBI at this point. And she just kind of, I'm screwing you. I'm going to walk out the door. I'm going to give you everything, and let's see if you can handle it. And she references her email, which was a resignation letter, which was a made-up resignation letter. That she had dated for March 6th of 2017. It was never produced until that day. And she references in there, like, per our conversation on March 6th of 2017. And so I go to my calendar because I'm pretty disciplined with my calendar, and I don't recall any conversations that I had with Stacy on March 6th. But I do remember the conversation that I had with her on March 5th at Carolina Ale House with Steve Laska. And so I asked her specifically, are you referencing the meeting in which we had on March 5th, 2017 at Carolina Ale House? And in her response to this, and candidly, I can clearly tell you that she wasn't the one responding. If we subpoena Stacy Bean and Steve Laska's Gmail account, we're going to see the fact that during this time period, Stacy and Steve were conspiring on a response back to me. But I basically, she outlines the fact that numerous people have heard this, and it's not just this one-time thing. And what she's really referencing is that Steve Laska got her back, and she's waiting for me to kind of dive in onto that. But the truth is that I don't, and I basically just state that I do remember that conversation on March 5th, and I have it recorded. And most of it was about a sexual affair, but we did talk about you transitioning out of the company and what that timing would look like and how that severance would. Now I'm presenting two documents here for you to review, and what you're seeing here is that the first one is the email exchange that I had with Stacy. But shortly thereafter, the next document that you're seeing is Steve Laska going into the FBI on June 21st. So we're talking literally like 4 days later. Obviously, Stacy and Steve had had a conversation about the fact that I potentially could have had a recorded conversation of that March 5th, 2017 meeting. And so Laska goes in the FBI, and he basically recaps an incident in Costa Rica. But it's predominantly lies. Again, Laska and Bean's lie has to grow in weight. It has to grow in darkness. It has to grow in energy. And Laska just continues to go down a path that's not accurate. And he creates perjury. He tells the FBI agents that it wasn't him, it was Peters. This document, it is 318 A CE 21 62955, and then it's dash 00, and there's a series of zeros, 83. And I'd look at the import document because that's the one that has the material. But my focus has to go back to the affidavit, and that document's important. But I want to note that, first, nearly everything that Laska accuses Peters of, he did. And yes, there's deception, but here are where the lies, the real dishonesty comes in. The first is that he states that he's never had an affair with Stacy. And that's just a flat-out lie. I have him on a recording admitting to the fact of that, as well as Stacy. Second, and this is kind of a cover your ass, in my opinion. What Steve is doing is he's basically saying, just in case Peters has this tape, I'm going to come up with a way out. And the way out that he kind of fabricates is that, yeah, I admitted at one point that I had an affair with Stacy, but the reason why I did that was because Stacy was being sexually abused and Peters was really mean to her. And I was trying to prevent him from having any more sexual affairs with Stacy. And so I made up something, and from that point on, he ceased to touch her going forward, and so it worked. But I went along for the ride. Yeah, I didn't say much, but I was along for the ride. You know I didn't do it, but this is kind of my position. And so I'll let you be the judge when you hear his voice on this recording. Here you go.
So, Steve, asking you, have you guys ever had sex together? Have you ever had sex? Okay. When was the first time?
Hey, Steve, everybody's done something wrong. What are the details?
I just want to make sure that we all have a level playing field. You know what has been said and what I know, and so, so you've had sex with him? Okay. And how many times? 5 times. First time was in Costa Rica? Cherry was there? Okay. Did Steve come on to you, or did you come on to him? What? Okay. And then after that, how did it transpire? Have you and I ever been together? You sure? Have you ever come on to me?
Hey, what's your answer to that last one? Okay, so we're going to talk about honesty, right?
Yep.
I'll start. All the things that were this was the one. I need you to know me. I'm telling you, right now, I forgive you.
But forgive me for what?
You see, you're not the only guy that walked around the house, okay? So the night before, you don't think I know when you were lying, right? So the story you whoa. So the story you told me about that night, I already knew that was a lie because there's no time for that. But the night before, Steve, you and Stacey, I forgive you too, by the way, because you're supposed to be our friend as well. The night before, Steve, the night before you give out from genders, and you guys were like drunk, and you go punch last night, and you spent the fucking day with the professional. You guys walk down the hall and you go to those. Well, upstairs you were gone for a long time, and I walked upstairs, okay? There was one light off and one light on. And I walked in the room with the light that was on. I walked in the room with the light on, and nobody was in there.
Okay.
So everybody was in the room with the light off. And then I went down, and it was still a long time before it came down.
We haven't fought.
Hey, Steve, I forgive you.
I'm just telling you.
I forgive you. Forgive you. Okay?
Okay. You're wrong now.
I'm not wrong, Steve.
You are wrong.
I'm not wrong.
Is he wrong?
She can say it all she wants.
What?
I'm not wrong, Steve. I don't need you to tell me So it's a difference between you and I. We want to pull out information. This seems awfully repetitive. It seems very like, how many times? This. This seems like you've already had that conversation.
We have. We absolutely have.
And so,
that's what I'm going through.
Steve, it's okay, I forgive you. I'm not going to change my mind. Hell, Steve, Steve, I can turn back the clock to what I was already suspicious.
Which is what?
The day that you guys came back in the office, we're checking out the apartment. She's flush. You're walking about 10 feet ahead of her. So I wonder when it started, Steve. I mean, I guess that I can turn back the clock a certain amount of time to figure it out.
Yeah.
But
it never happened, buddy.
I don't expect you to not lie. Lying's okay.
Why would I have told you, why would I now, all of a sudden, I'm not lying, I mean, why would I have told you up front that I did, and then now switch?
Because as you said the other night, you think manipulation is a strength.
No.
Steve, you tell me that I can't talk to Steve. You tell Stacy she can't talk to me during these few days.
I didn't tell her that.
Steve, I texted her and I said, you want to talk? She said, I was told it is not in our best interest, and I let it go.
All right, but what I said, you can talk to them all you want to. I want to know the conversation afterwards.
Oh, why would you want to know?
Because I would want to know what I'm walking into.
Why didn't I get to know what I was walking into, including this lie?
This isn't a lie.
Steve, it's unbelievable to me.
It's not unbelievable.
Steve, I know what I know, all right? That's the difference. I know what I know.
Okay.
I walked up the stairs. So you'll explain to me why you guys were in a dark room for 30 minutes.
We weren't in a dark room for 30 minutes.
Steve, I walked up the stairs. Your room was dark, hers was light. My suspicion was my suspicion. I opened up the door and walked in a room. There was nobody in there. You guys were in a room, dark, for 30 minutes.
Hey, it sounds like we're not going to be able to get the trust.
It's going to be hard, but here's the difference. I don't care about this. This is a different level of trust. This is stuff that you could lie to me forever and tell me that this that you did.
No, I mean, I just don't think
I wouldn't have cared if you did do it.
At the end of the day, I mean, it didn't happen.
I had different respect for you than that for me. I didn't walk in on you. I didn't try to walk in.
Yeah, I don't know. You could have walked in and nothing would have
Steve,
come
listen,
up.
by the way, I'm not trying to break you right now. We can continue the conversation.
You're not trying to be. First of all, you're not going to break me.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not even trying. I'm simply telling you, we continue with the conversation. But we are on by the way, we are on a level playing field.
I don't think we are. I don't think we are on a level playing field because I think ultimately at the end of the day we're just not going to have the trust going forward. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's fine if we're not going to. That's what I'm trying to instill right now. So if you think that I'm fucking Stacy, then we have an issue.
Still are.
Ever. Have I ever fucked you?
Dude, I'm not going to take her. You're completely out of control of her. I mean, come on. Completely.
Now, guys like John Vallot, Joe Walls, Will McNair, Mike Woolard, even some of the clients, like I think the Petrio and the Harris family, some of our horse boarders when they left. These are people who delight in the failures of others because it makes them feel better about who they are as individuals. When they get happy, I think it's because these folks are, to a certain extent, proclaiming that their hearts are not as broken as others. As we're talking about deceit, I think their hearts are just as deceitful. As for Stacy, Travis, Steve, and Matt, I think their agendas are different. Their hearts desired something, and their hearts told their brains to come up with some kind of rationale. And that rationale would enable them to kind of justify their actions as if they were doing the right thing. But their real motivation, if they're honest with themselves, has to do with money. I don't think that Steve Laska and Stacy Bean, after working at the firm and working as hard as they did, wanted to leave the firm empty-handed. And I believe as whistleblowers, there's an opportunity for them to make money. I could be wrong on that, but after reading some of the industry press, I think that there's a possibility that they are looking to gain financially. On the off chance that that doesn't work out quite well for them, I think that they had a plan which blows me away, that Matt Kamal and Travis Laska have now partnered up with one of our managers, DGS Capital. And DGS Capital was a manager that was handpicked by Steve Laska. He has a good friend that worked with him at Gerstein Fisher, and he convinced the investment management committee that we should terminate the relationship that we had with Parametric and replace that relationship with DGS. So who knows how long this plot or plan has gone on for. But we're talking within 30 days of the raid, Matt Kamal and Travis Laska are reaching out to existing Vision Quest wealth management clients and trying to steal them and bring them to DGS. I'm sure they're going to, again, justify in their mind that they were doing it under the umbrella, that they were doing what was right for their clients. I'm certainly not sure that's what they've presented to the FBI, to the clients, to their spouses, girlfriends. As we're on the topic of spouses, I think some of the things that we should look into, or something that we should look into, is that Jerry Laska has just earned a Series 7 license. I'm going to predict right now that she is partnered up with DGS and her son and Matt Kamal, and there is some way that she is receiving compensation that's going to be beneficial to the Laska household. I also think that we should subpoena the client list for DGS to see how many clients they actually did steal from Vision Quest Wealth Management, as well as Nick Kolbenschlag. Nick and his brother Tyler, they were under a pretty tight non-solicitation agreement, and I think they have every incentive to work with the government and work with the Laska and Bean plot that's going on right now in an attempt to take some clients. Now, onto this document, and my goal is to kind of show you that there's a percentage of truth mixed in with a percentage of dishonesty or untruth, and it's all designed or disguised to appear as truth. And this document is the document that enabled them to get the search and seizure. So I turn this over to Wes and sit here and say, I really question, like, with the information that we have and I'm about to present to you, I mean, is this search and seizure even legal? The path that they went down and what they presented and how inaccurate it is, I mean, is it even legal that they were able to get this search and seizure? So let's go by, in my opinion, some of the most significant elements and see what your thoughts are. Okay, first, I think I mentioned this before, but just in case I didn't, the special agent is David Harding, and he is the individual who's writing this document. And he states that the information that he received comes from or came from various sources. But at the time that he wrote this document, after going through the discovery material, he really only had 5 sources. And those 5 sources were Stacy Bean, Steve Laska, Matt Kamal, and Travis Laska. Now, those are 4. Where's the 5th? The 5th one is an undercover employee. She presented herself, she named herself Kim Roberts, and in the document she is UCE, and there's a number behind her name. But those are really the only sources that they have from the affidavit. All the other clients and all the other employees were not interviewed until after July 12th, 2017. If all the documents that they presented to me are accurate up to this point. So in the background section, in paragraph 11, they describe that VQ Wealth, the holding company, was exclusively managed by Amy Peters, and that all the accounting records were separate and apart from the books of Vision Quest Wealth Management and Vision Quest Capital. Additionally, they state in the document that Steve Peters and Amy Peters were the only ones that could transfer money from VQ Wealth to their personal accounts. Now, this is inaccurate in numerous ways. And we could sit here and say, man, with the information that you have, that's because Stacy Bean and Steve Laska were portraying this to the FBI, and the FBI has no fault They weren't operating under any malice or anything like that. But the problem that you have with that is that the FBI actually has a recording between Stacy Bean and Amy Peters. And that recording is on May 3rd. Literally, we're only talking a couple days after Bean and Laska walk in with their attorneys. It is recording 001 on May 3rd, 2017. And Amy is actually asking Stacy Bean about 6 transactions that occurred with inside VQ Wells Holding Company. Now remember, Stacy, as she has claimed and has Laska has claimed, has no visibility or no access whatsoever at all to VQ Wealth. But somehow she was able to move money from Cash Manager Online to execute 6 transactions. And Amy is asking her to identify what those 6 transactions are so that she could better understand it. Now here's where the deception comes in. It is true to sit here and say that I asked Amy to have oversight on VQ Wealth. I really wasn't looking at the financials on a regular basis, and so I did ask Amy to have oversight on VQ Wealth. She was also the one responsible for moving money from VQ Wealth into Wells Fargo. And I don't know if we want to highlight that. And I can also say that when Agent Harding makes the statement that Steve Peters and Amy Peters were the only 2 that moved money from Wealth to Wells Fargo, I have never moved money ever. So I don't think we want to highlight that because I don't want my wife in any kind of risk or danger. But to sit there and say that Stacy had no access is just not accurate. Not only did Stacy have it, but even Nick Kolbenschlag had access, our former compliance officer had to it. And anybody who asked would have been able to have access to the information. How can we prove that? We can prove that because Amy Peters never had any communication directly with the CPA firm Smith Leonard. I have had very little communication with Smith Leonard. I think I might have spoken to them 2 or 3 times. Same with Gene Whitmire. And so there's no way that Stacy could have done the tax returns, presented the information to the CPA firm without getting that information. Plus, she wouldn't have been able to do transactions back and forth through Cash Manager Online, which is what she did in that recording, without being able to know that there was cash in those accounts. So both Stacy, I know Steve Laska had seen VQ Wealth and the balance sheets, and we had gone over those before. And then Kolbenschlag had seen them. I know Wendy Miller had seen them before. So it is not accurate to sit here and say that Steve Peters and Amy Peters were like concealing the holding company. That's just a fallacy. Next, and this is just such a small point, but it does prove that the attention to detail on the little things just aren't there. Agent Harding in paragraph 12, he claims that Peters has this fiduciary responsibility, which I believe is true, to his clients, and he is subject to certain professional standards. But one of the professional standards, and you didn't even need to put it in here, it's just inaccurate, is that Peters had professional educational requirements. And this isn't accurate when it comes to the Series 65. There is no professional educational requirements that are assigned to holding that license. And in fact, I don't even know if it's considered a license. You have to pass the test so that you can render advice, but then even from that point on, you have to register, and I believe it's a U4, before you can start rendering advice. So the information is just not accurate. When he says that I was required to have professional educational requirements, it's not. Next, when we look at the document, and this is material to the indictment too as well, but he basically states that under the next paragraph, and again, that he is Special Agent David Harding, he states the promissory notes are guaranteed to investors at an 8% return, and that these promissory notes say that. Similar to the investors, I think it's possible, if I give Agent Harding the benefit of the doubt, that he is confused with the difference between something that says a promise and a guarantee. And there is a legal definition and difference between those two things. I honestly think that he heard what he wanted to hear. He heard that when Stacy and Steve came in and said, we guaranteed an investment to these investors. Again, it falls into this whole context of this scheme, this Ponzi scheme, where people are guaranteeing things. But I have never, ever used the word guarantee in any of my conversations with investors. And at the time that he presents his affidavit, he had no conversations with any investors. So the only way that he can conclude this, and he does at a later time, which he basically says that his sources, which would be Steve Laska, Stacy Bean, Matt Gamal, and Travis Laska, or the undercover employee, has said that I present to investors that there's a guaranteed return of 8%. Now I'm eventually going to get to this undercover employee, but staying on track and paragraph by paragraph in this document, if we go to the next paragraph, which is paragraph 14, it states that Peters was embezzling these funds and using them for Peters' private use, his own financial interest. And here again is where you get a percentage of truth mixed with a percentage of just untrue statements. And it's all designed to appear to be true in an attempt to persecute me. The funds were designed to expand Peters' own investment advisory firm. I mean, we've known that from the very beginning. And I'm about to disclaim a lot of the other junk that goes with this. But the money that was being raised through Vision Quest Capital was designed to expand Peters' own investment advisory firm. I mean, that's a true statement. It was designed to make an investment in an investment home in Costa Rica, not some vacation luxury home that Peters is just hanging out in. It has been designed to be an investment property, and I think that we can prove that it has produced income. It still is currently today. Another element about this house that I find frustrating is that they make it out to be like that Peters took this money and invested it into a house that's owned specifically by Steve and Amy Peters. Well, that's not true. The money went into an entity that is owned by Steve and Amy Peters that is a Costa Rican entity. And that Costa Rican entity is owned by Steve and Amy Peters, but so is Vision Quest Capital. Vision Quest Capital is owned by Steve and Amy Peters through VQ Wealth. So again, it is a true statement that Peters utilized the cash from investors, to invest in this Costa Rican property, and it's owned by Steve and Amy Peters through a Costa Rican entity. But that's no different than Steve and Amy Peters owning Vision Quest Capital, in my opinion. And again, maybe I'm missing something, but my rationale is that. I think it's also true that Peters utilized this cash from investors to support the operations of all Vision Quest Capital entities, okay, in some form or fashion. All of them were cash flow businesses. I don't know how you can see them as not being cash flow businesses. And they went into the operations of the Vision Quest entities to support and grow them. And in turn, that would make it would benefit Peters and his own financial interest in that particular case. So I think that those are true statements. I also would tell you that when you sit there and you say you're investing in the operations of the business, that includes salaries. And that included Peters' salary. And it would be true to say that Peters used some of that capital to capitalize his businesses and the operations of his business. And he took a salary. It would also be true to sit there and say that at certain stages he took some of that capital and restructured debt, repaid back debt to investors. I would say that that's accurate too as well. But none of this was designed under this context of fraud or a Ponzi scheme. And it certainly was, everybody knew that it was happening at my firm. for them to say that they did not know is not an accurate statement. And so, excuse me, what is untrue is that it was embezzlement. And what is untrue is that the investments in businesses that we were investing in were not genuine investments or cash flow businesses. And I'm not going to go into that detail. I'm going to save that for another video. But I'm going to prove, okay, when I talk about advisory acquisitions, which will be another video, or I go into Costa Rica house, that will be another video. But to say that I was embezzling money and to say that I wasn't making genuine investments is just not a true statement. Okay, continuing down this path of deception, which is a percentage of truth and a percentage that's untrue. Bean Laska and the whole group and the government, in paragraph 16, Agent Harding states that Peters basically targeted his own Vision Quest Wealth Management clients and as capital investors. This is a true statement. In Reg D, when you do a Reg D, there is a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of familiarity you have to have with the investors and their backgrounds. And what better people to go and talk to than the people that you have an intimate relationship with? So to sit here and say that we targeted them, those would be the first people that we would have invested. In fact, often positions saying, I don't think we should go out to the community as a whole and talk about Vision Quest Capital to anybody other than our Vision Quest Wealth Management clients. I also, and this could be a fallacy, but and my knowledge is limited on this, but I don't think you're supposed to be doing mass marketing. I don't think you're supposed to go out to and broadcast this out. I think it's supposed to be inside your existing network when you do Reg D. So, that's a true statement. What's untrue, though, is the fact that it states that we didn't disclose this information to the clients, and that's just not accurate. We're required to hold on to our ADVs for 5 years. So I have access from 2012 to present day 2017, when we got closed down last year. And over that 5-year period, under Section 10, it's actually like Item 10. I believe it's called disclosing outside business activities or other affiliations. But in that section of the ADV, it states that I own Vision Quest Wealth Management through VQ Wealth, and that VQ Wealth owns Vision Quest Capital. I require on the contracts of every client that they initial that they receive the ADV, also the privacy policy. It's like on the 3rd page or 4th page of the contract. We also then send out the ADV every year to all of our clients. We keep a copy of the email that was sent out and a list of distribution of all of the individuals who that ADV was sent to. So we can claim, somebody can claim that I didn't have the proper disclosures, that I didn't disclose enough, that I should have disclosed more to them. And I can even accept all of that. But to sit here and say that I was trying to defraud investors and that I wasn't telling them that I owned Vision Quest Capital, I think it's crazy. Even the name sounds exactly the same. Another significant moment of perjury for Steve Laska comes in the claim that he nor my staff or any of my clients knew that Peters was using Vision Quest Capital to buy advisory firms. Agent Harding states that Peters falsely informed the Chief Investment Officer, Steve Laska, and that Peters was using his personal monies to actually fund Vision Quest Wealth Management. He never really told Laska that he was raising capital through Vision Quest Capital to fund the RIA purchases. Now, this gets discredited immediately by just simply looking at Steve Laska's offer letter and the responsibilities that I assigned to him in Appendix A of that offer letter. Now, at this point, I am showing you some documents as you're hearing my voice, and And the first document I'm showing you is Steve Laska's offer letter. And I'm showing you the appendix that I just referred to. But also the claim that others didn't know about is a little bit ridiculous. I'm also going to show you Matt Gamal's offer letter. Steve Kervac had a similar offer letter. And all of these are basically providing detail on what their responsibilities are. And specifically, one of their responsibilities is to raise capital through high net worth individuals. So through Vision Quest Capital, and with the goal of being able to fund the advisor acquisition strategy. And so that claim is just not true. As for the strategic plans, they are disseminated each year, and they're disseminated each year to the entire staff. So when Randall Griggs came on in 2014, he had a copy of the strategic plan for that year, and he received the strategic plans for each year after 2015, 16, and 17. Steve Kervac and Matt Gamal received theirs before they came on with the firm, and we'll be able to identify those emails that were sent out to them from Steve Laska with the strategic plans. I think I was copied on those emails going out. But in 2014, we had our advisory acquisition strategy in place, and we had a goal to raise roughly $2 million in capital. And that goal was specifically assigned to Steve Laska per the strategic plan. It states in the strategic plan that we're raising this capital in an effort to support and quickly grow our acquisition strategy and the growth objectives for Vision Quest Wealth Management. So that claim is just inaccurate. What's interesting is that our 2015 goal was 1.75 million, I think, in capital, and that specifically states that it was designed for the acquisition strategy. And again, the team leader that is identified in the strategic plan is Steve Laska. And Peter spells out that in this year, in 2015, because we have taken on some clients, we had taken on Randall Griggs clients, and some of us were not familiar with them, that Steve Laska had the responsibility to ensure that an investment in Vision Quest Capital would be an appropriate investment strategy. In 2016, the strategic plan outlines that Stacy Bean now is going to be responsible for all financial reporting, and that Steve Laska is still responsible for the capital raise and the acquisition strategy. And the 2016 strategic plan was sent out to Matt and Steve before they came on. But what I think is important is that at one point, the FBI or the government's trying to make this position as if that when Stacy took on the position of chief of staff and then also as the manager, VQ Capital's manager, that this was some kind of game playing that we had, right, that we were doing. We were trying to distance ourselves. And I don't know if that comes from Laska, whether or not that comes from Bean, or whether or not that's something that they just come up with on their own. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what we see is that the strategic plan that was disseminated via email long before the freaking SEC came in had Bean listed as the person responsible for the financial affairs of all companies, and that came on when she became the manager of Capital as well. And then the only difference that you're going to really see in 2017, because it's all spelled out in the strategic plan, but we break up, because as we're growing, I felt that it was necessary for us to break up the company into teams. And so 2017 is the first year that you have strategic plans where they're specifically team-based. And then compensation was driven by teams too as well. And so I had some concerns that the SEC could perceive that as that, it was no longer at a firm level, and there are definitely recordings of those things. But the compensation still hadn't changed. It wasn't like you were getting paid a commission. You sold, $200,000 or something, and you got 3% on it or 2% on it. That didn't exist for any of our staff. It was still team-based, and the compensation was based on that team. In paragraph 24, they talk about informant number 4, and this is Matt Gamal. And I'm very familiar with this conversation that Gamal was having with me, where he is we're discussing paying back investors. Now they talk about this as being a recording. This recording is the one with Catherine Milan, and this is the one that's missing right now. And I think this is a very important WAV file for us to get, because they reference it multiple times, yet, and we see the conversation, but I have not heard the recording. And I remember that recording. I kind of lay into Matt about the fact that he's trying to say he doesn't know how to position, the Vision Quest Capital investor to Catherine Milan. And I believe it's on June 6th or something along those lines that this conversation took place. But I have not heard the recording, yet they're referencing it again in the affidavit. In paragraph 25, Harding states that Peters would be down to roughly $30,000, and it wouldn't be able for him to pay back investors. The problem with this is that he's referencing, again, same title, like 318A CE 2162955, and then it's dash 075. And if you go to page 3 of that document, it doesn't state that. It states that Peter says that after he pays everyone off and he pays all the expenses and he cuts back all the costs and he gets to the point where he's running this business, by the time the next fees come around, he's only going to have roughly $30,000 left until the next fee billing cycle. And so Peters is talking about, I'm talking about the fact that that I'm fine, but I've never had such a small amount of money as my cushion, and I was uncomfortable with that. Now, I've read those FBI notes, but again, this is crazy that there is no recording between this conversation of Steve Laska and Steve Peters on May 9th. No recorded WAV file. They reference the document, but there is no recording. Next, we go on to, and I'm actually going to create a completely different video on this specific topic, but I have to address a little bit of it. In paragraph 27, Agent Harding finally states that Peters told this undercover agent or employee, Kim Roberts, that he could guarantee her an 8% return. Now, he also caveats that by saying it's an illiquid investment. Again, here is a combination of truth and untruth. But the problem that I'm faced with is that I've only ever had 3 conversations with this woman. And they took place 2 in May and 1 in July. And all of them are recorded, and we have access to them. They're all under a Sunshiner file, WAV file. And I make no reference to Vision Quest Capital at all. I do talk about business development companies, and in talking about business development companies, I never use the word guarantee, ever. And so this information is just inaccurate. And I'm going to provide another video, portions of that audio. But this paragraph and how it was presented to the courts is inaccurate. This whole obstruction of justice. And like the other stuff that I had already discussed, I think that there is some truth to some of the things that they're describing and things that are just totally untrue. And so, again, it's so deceptive. For me, I start in paragraph 32. And in 32, it basically states that in October of 2016, when the examiners were here, Peters told his staff to scrub out Vision Quest Capital. That's true. That's a true statement. In October 2016, of the advice of my counsel, as well as my chief compliance officer being Randall Griggs, we had a conversation where I was being told that you only give the examiners what they need. They're here for a routine examination, and we should be pushing back on things like Vision Quest Capital. They're here for a routine examination. They're not here to investigate Vision Quest Capital. And until they turn to us and say that they're here to investigate Vision Quest Capital, we should be only providing them information that is relative to the registrant, which was Vision Quest Wealth Management. And so we did scrub out Vision Quest Capital in October of 2016. We also scrubbed out attorney-client privilege information. So that stuff is accurate. But I was aware of Steve Laska, Travis Laska, Cherry Laska, Travis's girlfriend Liz, coming in and forging or tracing signatures or whatever they did on client investment policy statements. I didn't approve of that. I didn't approve of what they did. I didn't tell them to do that. That's totally not true. Travis Laska got compensated for getting paperwork done well during the acquisition. That was his job. He was responsible for business transitions. And so when we did a close examination and found that investment policy statements weren't in client accounts, I was not happy. And I wasn't happy with Steve Laska because he, as the chief investment officer, had told me that his son and the work that his son did was accurate and that he had completed the transition and that all the paperwork was accurate. And so I told him to fix it. That's what I did tell him to do. I told him to fix it. And I was not happy. And eventually he did tell me that he got it all completed. And I said, wow, you got it done fast. That's awesome. And he did tell me that, in fact, the comment was that Liz, Travis's girlfriend, who is a medical student, would make a great surgeon because she has a great hand for tracing signatures on documents. So, candidly, I don't think it was even Travis. I think it was Cherry and Liz who actually did the tracing on those investment policy statements. I did know about it. And I chose not to rat out anyone. As I say, my Allentown, Philadelphia style is coming out of me. I mean, I didn't think it was the responsibility of anybody outside of our firm to handle. I handled it internally. I had my conversation with Steve Laska and told him not to do it again. So I'm not going to continue on this whole obstruction of justice through this one specific document. I think it warrants its own video. But I'm going to end with this. In paragraph 33, Harding states that Peters told Stacy to cook the books. Now, from my understanding, Wes, you already have had conversations or heard those recordings. I have. At no point did I ever state that she should cook the books. I think the statement, if I remember correctly, is that I told her the fact that we're not getting the financial information to the SEC fast enough will make them think that we are trying to cook the books. There is no recording or any conversation that I have come across or any request from me where I simply say the words, cook the books. Now, again, part truth, part untruth. There is definitely a recording where I'm basically telling Stacy and Dale and I think others, even Dana I was telling. Dana was the new CPA that was trying to hire, Dana McBroom, in which I was saying I am unhappy with the existing chart of accounts and that I wanted them changed. And primarily because it was a mess. Stacy never produced QuickBooks information for me financially. She produced all of her data in Excel spreadsheets because she knew the way I wanted to see it. She just managed the books one way, and then she presented things on an Excel spreadsheet differently to me. And so when I finally was asking for specifically, because we knew we were getting rid of Stacy, I want to see QuickBooks reports. And I started seeing them, really quite honestly, just the shit work and mess that she had done. I wanted things simplified. I wanted the QuickBooks to change. And I think there are some funny things that I've seen in Discovery. She references, I think, payments to under the context of a retainer fee. I think that's her hiding it from me because if it was Michelle Bennett, that should have been paid as part of her note. It should have never been paid through Vision Quest Wealth Management or VQ Wealth or any of those. I mean, it shouldn't have been paid that way. I never advised her to pay that way. When it came to Brenner, like that should have never gone through Vision Quest Wealth Management. Vision Quest Wealth Management had no equity in any of those entities. They were all investments made and represented through Vision Quest Capital. So in essence, she's the one who used that pot of money and paid it ineffectively. I think another one was that she changed a payment of her dad, Mo Bean, to like her dad's company, and the check represented one, and the books represented something else. Why would I give a crap about whether or not she paid her dad or paid her dad's company? I'd have no idea. Unless her dad was not doing the work and she was just paying him, I'd have a problem with that. But if he did work for us, why would I care whether or not she paid him or the company? I'd have no reason to change that. So a lot of those things, again, it's like both her and Steve are taking information that I think that they were concerned about and making it out to be like Peters did it, or Peters was the cause of why this had changed. And that's just not accurate.